not saying no and not having that be a part of the relationship means that you don't know each other at all.
Really?
And you're not really in a relationship with each other. You're in a relationship with what you think the other person wants.
So if you can't tell your partner no, then you're not really in a
real authentic relationship. They don't know who you are.
Say more about that.
They're in a relationship with this person you're putting out there to them, but you're really actually guarding them from them actually getting to know who you are.
Representative.
A lot of people that get called narcissist are really people with just deep avoidant attachment relational wounds. I believe we all have this true, healthy, authentic self. Some of us, we are so enmeshed with our trauma parts that we hardly ever see that part of ourselves. So that's why we feel so crappy. We don't even know who we are, really.
Yeah, that's so true.
We're just living out of our trauma and our fear. And I wanted to get a book out there to help people learn how to differentiate some of that, at least cognitively, and be able to bring that into therapy or bring that into a meditation practice or whatever it was for them to get a bit more clear and get more attached to that true, authentic self.
How can somebody get more attached to their true, authentic self?
They got to figure out what's in the way. The bullshit.
Fully connected. Hey, real quick, guys, before we get started with the episode, I just want to say thank you for clicking on this video. I realize the majority of people who watch this podcast haven't yet subscribed to the podcast. So take that time right now to hit that subscribe button and to smash that like button. I really appreciate the support. Now let's get back to the episode. All right, welcome back to the Fully Connected Podcast, your go-to destination for inspirational conversations to help you become your greatest version. I am your host, Chris Jones, licensed therapist and owner of Fully Connected Counseling. Today we got a very special guest, right? She's a licensed therapist, entrepreneur, and author, right? She is the owner of Soma Therapy, which is one of the largest mental health private practice in Kansas. 4 different locations here in the city and over how many providers? I can't even remember, but a lot of different therapists she has under her, right? She specializes in eating disorders and relational trauma, right? She's dedicated her career to helping individuals heal through their trauma, and we're going to talk about it today. She's also the author of Beneath Your Bullshit. Yep, you heard that right. Beneath Your Bullshit, a book, which pretty much is a guide to help you rediscover your awesomeness, as she says, and to be able to help you set healthy boundaries so you can keep all those toxic people out of your life. All right. So she also has over 300,000 followers on TikTok, where she uploads videos helping individuals to be able to heal through their trauma. Without further ado, we have Jenny Helms Calvin. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here. How are you doing?
Awesome. I'm doing all right. Thank you for coming on the show.
Good. Cool.
Definitely. So we were talking, you started your private practice in 2019. Right? 2019. Yeah. And you were doing therapy for about 2 or 3 years before then, right?
Yep. That's right.
Who inspired you to start a private practice?
I wasn't initially as brave as I think it seems. I was going to go into business with the folks that I was in the group practice and prior to that. And then about a few months prior to starting, for one reason or another, things just didn't work out on their end. And I had one of those, moments of reflection to say, do I really want to do this on my own? Especially being so new and not knowing much about business at all, and young, and all those other things, all the other fear and imposter syndrome that came into place.
Absolutely.
I admittedly cried that night, just, in my own, it was more about my own fear and insecurity. And the next day, there's just some peace that fell over me of just give it a year. Give it a year and see if it's something that you enjoy, if you have some success, if you're able to build kind of this vision that I had been working on at that point for almost a year. And I committed to that. And in a year, it was so solid for me that I wanted to continue and that I really enjoyed it. And I found kind of a new passion I didn't really know that I had.
So business. You know, a lot of like social workers or people in the service-oriented fields are fearful of marketing themselves or business. And I was one of those individuals too. It took me a while to be able to start my own practice. But, you know, working at different companies, you're like, you know what? I think I'll take that leap. I remember you talked about too, like in one of the podcasts, that you were in grad school, right? And you dropped out at Colorado, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't mind like sharing, like what made you decide to drop out and how did you keep going after that?
Yeah, it was a very weird period of my life in the sense that from 16 onward, I was the weirdo in high school that knew that they wanted to be a therapist because I had been so impacted by my therapist at that time. And from that point, I felt like my path was very, you know, you get your psychology degree. And then I went out to get my marriage and family or master's in marriage and family therapy. Yeah. And when I got out to Colorado, I started to really face some of my own mental health struggles and questions about, am I just doing this, like you said, from that place of my own trauma? Like, what would my life have been like if I didn't have an eating disorder? Right. Would I have chosen a different path? And I had some other passions and things too that I wasn't sure if I was just kind of, you know, putting those to the side because therapy and mental health felt safe in a way, which is crazy to think about because it is such a scary field itself, but it felt safe to me. And I wanted to understand that better. I also felt like I was going through grad school and my own mental health was declining. And I, at the time, put this pressure on myself that if I go through this program and if I'm in this field, I have to have all of my ducks in a row with my own mental health all the time. Not understanding that part of this journey is that we are human ourselves and we are going to have our mental health struggles. And it's not that you have to be perfect in your mental health. It's more that you have to be self-aware and able to like heal that, use that, make sure you're not letting that interfere, of course, with your therapy and what you do in your mental health profession. And you don't have to be perfect, thankfully, because I was really struggling with depression at the time. So I took myself out of grad school and I was like, let me figure this out before I keep moving forward. And then in the next 2 years, life still took me right back to mental health. And I still found myself, all I was doing in my free time was still listening to podcasts and reading books about it and just loving what I was doing and learning in that way. And so I was like, why take myself out of this space? And learning that, you know, I don't have to be perfect, thankfully. So once I was able to integrate that into the process, I wanted to go and start again. And it was so funny. I'm sure for people in my life too, kind of whiplash. They're like, wait, you left grad school. And I had I was at a really amazing program. I mean, I want to give kudos to those people there. I'm sure they are probably surprised if they learn that I went back to grad school. I don't know if they know or not, but if they ever learn that, they're probably like, what a weird path for you to take to just drop out, you know, move to a different state and go back to grad school again. But I like to share that with people too, because I remember at the time feeling super alone in that. And I think a lot of people think you have to have everything figured out. And you can't take a break, and that if you do, like, your life is over, or at least sure that's how I felt at the time. And I want to share that that's not the case. I think you're going to find what you need to find. And ultimately, I think I did need to have that pivot in my life and to go through some of those hardships.
Yeah. So Colorado State, you were there in grad school, and then so you dropped out and then you came to Wichita. You know, like, what made you come to Wichita? Because I remember at first you weren't a fan like most people, but now you're here for going on like 9 years or so now?
Yes.
You know, so like how, you know, what was it? Was there like, you know, family, relationships? Usually it's always some kind of relationship or something that brings people to a place like this. It's not the environment. Yes.
And I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. Wichita wasn't really on my radar at all prior to coming here. And the guy that I was dating at the time, his company was acquired by Coke. And he moved to Wichita. And we decided in our relationship at that time that I was going to go out there and we were going to try living together. And so, yeah, that's what brought me to Wichita. Again, I had that terrible attitude because I'm so cool and I'm from Atlanta.
Which part? What zone?
You're familiar more so with the Northeast?
Parents in Evans.
Okay.
Georgia, like 2 hours away.
Okay. Well, I'm from a city that it's Norcross, but now it is called Peachtree Corners, which is unsurprising. Everything's Peachtree down there, but
Peachtree. Yeah, I remember they had a story. There's like, I remember when I was there, they said something about Peachtree. I can't remember what it was, but I love Atlanta.
Yeah, me too.
I love Atlanta. It's awesome, man. It definitely feels really good. But, with the therapy stuff, because I know there's probably going to be like, probably some of my clients watching and whatnot. And with some of the stuff that I see, now doing therapy for almost going on 8 years now, a lot of like people who are people pleasers, people who are, the anxious attachment type, which, at times I used to be, or even avoiding attachment. But like, if you could maybe educate some of the viewers on like, if somebody's a people pleaser, what would they need to do to to no longer do that anymore?
To no longer do that. Yeah. I mean, I wish it was just a simple answer. I know, right? I think, for all of us, big picture, we have to understand the function of that in our lives, the function of people pleasing. What is that doing for us? Where did we pick that up along our path? I try to always get people to think back, if they can remember what's the earliest memory you have of feeling that way, if they can connect to it. Some people can, some people can't. And just to understand when it developed when that people pleasing part developed, it can really give us insight as to what purpose it served and ways we think it's serving us now, but it's also not serving us, right? Which is why we, go to therapy and we're like, hey, help me not do this thing anymore that's now taking over my life.
Exactly. And would you say like people pleasing is just more of that mostly anxious attachment type?
I see where you're coming from in that. I think it's easier to spot an anxious attachment types. And I would say an avoidant attachment, it comes through in the ways that because people don't want to hurt people's feelings, they avoid.
Yeah.
So it's a different flavor of what that looks like. But so the way it represents itself is different if it's based in that like anxiety of people pleasing, whether, there's that anxious attachment style or avoidant, or if you're so lucky to have the combo, which I do myself,
is that
like,
the fearful
you get to,
right?
Yeah, and it's, something I've really worked towards getting more and more into that secure attachment mode my entire life. And I'm very grateful for the progress and where I'm at now, but 100% I like to admit, like I've been in both places, for sure.
Man, I feel like even too, like based on the relationship, sometimes I feel like the attachment style could change.
Yeah.
Now just some people feel kind of like, man, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Well, the good news is you can heal it and it can shift throughout life. And while that's also good news, it can go the opposite. Some people can actually have secure attachment and then have some relational trauma happen later in life and then switch into an insecure attachment style. Yeah. So I think, big picture, it's changeable.
It's changeable, definitely.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about the book because I haven't got a chance to actually read the book, but I know that you wrote one.
I did.
So if you had to be able to give like a synopsis of the book, without spoiling it, so people could still purchase it on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is the book and what motivates you to write it?
I already had so much material that I had written. It is so fun to write and create for me. That's just part of that's when I was talking about the things I really had a passion for. I have this like creative side and music and things like that I love to tap into. So when I can combine it with mental health, I think that's really, really fun. That's really a special place for me. And I started to realize in the work I was doing with clients, the same themes and patterns and, the things that we were discussing and how we were processing them came up again and again.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to give a resource to folks that for whatever reason couldn't access or go to therapy. Right. Especially during that time, it was during the pandemic where a lot of people were struggling to get access to therapy because we didn't have enough resources. And then the other biggest barrier is just people not having the financial resources. Right. And so I wanted to be like, hey, I know this isn't a replacement, But here's a good start. Here's something to at least start thinking about these themes and processing through this.
Sure.
You know, if you don't have the opportunity to go and sit with a therapist and do it, or take this to your therapist. Like when you're processing these themes and you're, you know, learning about yourself and your attachment styles, you know.
And that's what inspired you to do the TikTok, because I almost forgot you have like almost like 300 or 320,000 or something followers. Like how does this, how does one get 300,000?
No, it's, you know, it's funny. Like I kind of forget about that sometimes. No, I think it's just fun. I mean, honestly, it started as fun and advocacy, and I wanted to put something out there because there was so much that was not good. That was just total garbage. And I was like, we need to get some therapists and mental health pros in this space, because people would be like, you know, did your boyfriend not respond to you? Wait 2 hours and do this or whatever. And just like horrible relational advice for people that I was imagining were just simply struggling with these attachment wounds and looking for answers. Man,
it's one of like the common questions I feel like I get now, or people, or even parents or clients, but a lot of clients who ask me, you know, Chris, what is a narcissist? Like, I feel like my ex is a narcissist. I feel like my mom is a narcissist. Like, can we just, you know, if you can just share your opinion, because this just seems like within, I would say since the pandemic, like everybody's ex is a narcissist. So it's like, what is, you know, the proper way to be able to spot a narcissist, you know, because not everybody's ex, it's not that, you know, popular, right? It's very rare diagnosis.
Yeah. And I think, so languaging is tricky in our field because people relate and like see that word. And I think it means different things to different people. When I think about it, I think that all of us have narcissistic tendencies. Every person, we all can. And usually if that's manifesting during a time that you're just triggered or you're hurt and it's not your default, I would say that person's not a narcissist. And typically too, a lot of people that get called narcissist are really people with just deep avoidant attachment relational wounds. And so I think that often gets misdiagnosed or misunderstood. When I think of like, you know, textbook true narcissism, I think of a person who is so deeply rooted in those wounds that is kind of their default setting day to day. And they are truly, they get joy. It's not from a place of pain, but more so from a place of like, they truly get joy and excitement from seeing another person in pain. Oof. And so that's a very different thing. And to me, it's more of like, you know, when you think of, you start to get into like what a psychopath is and things like that, right? But to not go too deep. And even there, I'm a weirdo in the sense that I believe that even narcissists can get healing, narcissists, quote unquote, in therapy. I think it just is a lot harder.
Why do you believe that they actually could heal?
So a few different pieces. When I first started my journey in healing with an eating disorder, there's so many people that told me I would never recover.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't think that they were meaning to be hurtful. I think they genuinely thought that. They're just trying to prepare me and say, okay, get ready for this life of like always having to live that way.
Were these therapists, family?
It was both. It was people that were in the field and family.
Right.
And luckily, the therapist that I worked with did not believe that at all. And she was also somebody who had fully recovered from her eating disorder. So I think from day one, I've been more open to the fact that we can say things in our field and still be wrong.
Right. We're not perfect.
No, not at all. And I think like the other piece that I've learned over time, I think often when we don't have the tools or resources yet or don't know how we can help somebody and heal their disorder, we blame the client. We'll say that they're the ones with the severe and persistent mental illness, or they are the ones not working hard enough, which sometimes they're not. So I'm not saying they don't, that's not a thing, but I think often, you know, the field of psychiatry and psychology, we've kind of blamed the patient.
Absolutely.
Versus realizing like, where are we lacking and where are we just don't have the tools or resources yet to help that person.
Right. You got to know your scope. You know, for sure. I would say so, man. That's really interesting because I remember you said you were in therapy yourself as well, you know, and obviously for the eating disorder, and then you were hospitalized a few times, and then there was that therapist, you know, you had that therapist who inspired you, you know, and, you know, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that story, because, you know, eating disorder is real. It's one of the deadliest mental health disorders.
Yeah.
Because if you don't eat, then that's that. But, you know, it's a serious thing. So I don't know if you could maybe shed a little light on that. Like, what was that? What did the therapist do, you know, that inspired you to finally the light bulb turned on?
You know, I would like to say it was, you know, a magical, wonderful process, but it was actually very painful, very long. And I think at some point I just had this moment of, you know, we call it like work the eating disorder out of a job.
Yeah.
So
work the eating.
So like what the function it was serving in my life, like I had to figure out what that was. And were there other more, you know, when we talk about risk mitigation, are there other ways that I can cope with that, or other things and parts of me that can take on that role versus it being an eating disorder? And so I like to be really clear, while I healed from the eating disorder and no longer use those behaviors, it wasn't that I was fully healed. I had to still work through the layers of relational trauma and the things that I was struggling with, the things that bring depression in my life. And I no longer did that with those behaviors. And I was able to get to a space where they no longer served a purpose. And in my mind almost felt silly, which is crazy to think about because I was so attached to it before, you know? So it is an interesting journey that at some point I just had to learn how to work the eating disorder out of a job and be willing to do the other work that I would say was, you know, painful and a little bit deeper, and has been my process since then.
So when you say work the eating disorder out of the job, I feel like even maybe with depression too, it could be something similar as well. Like, how does one work it out of a job? Like, do you just stop feeding into it? You know, no pun intended. You know?
Stop feeding into it. Yeah. I mean, again, like, okay, so I'm trying to like give it as an example where, you know, for me, my eating disorder served a lot of purposes of like distracting myself and numbing myself and feeling in control because I didn't feel safe. And so I had to gain a sense of security in myself, learn how to let go of control, learn how to be okay with imperfection.
Oh yeah. That's
a
tough one.
Yeah. And it was because like as a kid, like I felt like I had to do these things and be a certain way to gain love, to gain, you know, that feeling of being enough, to be worthy. And because I didn't know that came from other places, or until that came from other places for me, that was where I got my worth.
Were your parents together?
No.
Yeah.
No. I grew up mostly with my mom and stepdad.
Yeah. So then, like, kind of like I always say, our life is like a Netflix series, and like when you go back to season 1, episode 1 through 8, like it's like everything just always starts from there, you know. So it's interesting, you know, like talking to other therapists and realizing, like, I feel like trauma makes character. Yeah. You know, like even though I've been through trauma, and obviously you have as well, it's kind of made us want to get into these fields, but at the same time, you have to heal that trauma before healing other people's trauma as well. So
yeah,
was that, you know, growing up, you know, in a divorced home, you know, what was that like? And is that the reason why you knew you wanted to be a therapist at an early age?
You know, it's interesting. Divorced home, I didn't really see my bio dad at all. So even though I was in a divorced home, there wasn't a lot of the chaos that can happen for kiddos when they're having to go back and forth a lot. So I didn't have that. However, I did have other things that happened, and like ways that, you know, my mom and stepdad, I called them my parents, they were doing their best. And there were a lot of wounds that happened in my childhood from them, and even from prior to then when my biological dad was in my life. Yeah. And so I think for me, I was just trying to figure out how to deal with a lot of intense emotions that were coming up for me as a kid. Like I had depression. The first time I can remember, I was probably 9 or 10 years old. I feel like young for depression. And I didn't have people in my life that really knew what to do with that, because they didn't have those resources and skills and those things given to them when they were little. And so I think as a kid, I was just trying to figure it all out on my own.
Really?
And, you know, I didn't have great answers to that. I mean, eventually the eating disorder was my answer, but
did your like parents believe in therapy at that time? Like, did they know you were like maybe possibly depressed at 10?
Yeah, my mom actually, so the therapist that I saw once I was diagnosed with an eating disorder, that was my 4th therapist at that point in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And
I had to go through some of those.
Yeah. So I went through others, and I don't, you know, I can't say if it was them or me, because I don't know that I was
That's true.
ready either. Like, I wasn't engaging in the process. And I just didn't really connect to those first 3.
I know. I had some crappy first 3 too, but it inspired me to be able to be where I am now. And I remember now, like, being on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
You know, I had a client like just last week, and he said his girlfriend's thinking about, you know, firing her therapist because like she like started crying and like in the session, you know, and I kind of felt like, wow, like, yeah, I feel bad. But at the same time, like, you're a human, we're going to cry. But I think maybe like what he was saying, that she was like crying like more than the patient. It might have been a little too much.
A little too intense. Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, and I always tell people, because I do believe in trying to find a good fit, and if something weird ever happens, like a rupture with your therapist, try talking to them about it.
Yes.
See what happens first before going to another one, because I even tell my clients at some point, you're going to be mad at me probably. Like, that's probably going to happen. It's not a bad thing. Let's embrace that and figure out, you know, like, it might be you, like, part of you actually getting your sense of self and healing. And I think it will be healing to know you could be mad with somebody that you have that connection with, and you can be okay.
And I think that's the difference of that versus, like, as you said, therapy is not just going to have a glass of wine with your friends.
Right. It's very different. Yeah.
What would you say is the difference? Because some people think that that's okay. You know, I mean, it's still okay to go out with your friend, but like, what would you say is like the difference between, you know, therapy and then just talking to a friend?
The biggest difference is that your friends, because of the position they're in, seeing you day to day, they cannot hold the same lens of objectivity. They're not there. It's not their job at that moment to collect the patterns and to really help you through stuff, or at least if they're doing that, like, you know what I mean? They might be a little enmeshed in a way, right? So it's like, that's really not their role, right? And therapists are trained professionally to create that as much as possible while also being a human that connects with you. For sure. You know, to be able to hold that space, right? And to be able to challenge you. And with friends, if they challenge you, there might be consequences with that, where after that, you're going to have to, you know, friends can't always do that in ways that therapists can. Now, some friends can, and I think that's great too. I'm not saying that friendships can't be really healthy. I would just say most of us are not lucky enough, especially when we struggle with our mental health, to have friends that are also in a really mentally healthy space. Right. So sometimes we even go to our friends and we make things worse. Or, you know, what a lot of people do, we call it triangulation in marriage and family therapy. They're frustrated about something with a person or a situation. So they go to their friend, they talk to their friend about it, and it's almost like they decompress, and they, you know, until they get really frustrated again, they forget about it. And they don't do anything about it. Right. And so it can actually be bad because they keep going to their friend to offload and decompress, but they need that energy. They need that anger to create movement of make a change. Go talk to that person.
Yeah, so it sounds like the key is they would need to actually, instead of just maybe emotionally dumping, to actually do something about it, you know, and then like setting that boundary of like, you know, because I know even like sometimes like in therapy or just like people in general, like they'll continue to talk about the same thing. But it's like, what have you done? Like, have you done any steps to be able to get past this? Yeah. Or are we just going to keep talking about this over and over? Because it sounds like you don't want to be better. You want to be bitter. Right. Right. I love that. You don't want to be better. You want to be bitter. That's a perfect way of saying it. It's true. And some people do that in therapy and they just keep doing that. And some therapists let that happen. I have to fire myself.
Sometimes I've had to fire myself too.
What would you say though? Because man, I have a client. Oh my goodness. And I'm thinking about her. She's an adult client. And I've told her, I was like, man, we're not going to schedule next session till we really address this. And she's been avoiding it. And I'm fine with it because I told her. Yeah. But I heard something. I remember Robert Greene. He said something about if you can't take criticism, that's because your ego is fragile. Mm-hmm. So what would you say for just like individuals in general, whether it be clients or just people who just can't take criticism? You know, like you give like constructive, positive criticism, they get defensive. Like some people might say, oh, they're a narcissist, but that may not always be the case.
Yeah.
But
well, I think as therapists, we have different tools, right? And sometimes it's being more direct. Mm-hmm. If a person can take that in, or if we at least want to try and like let that sit for them.
Right.
If that's not working, I would get curious about their defensiveness. You know what I mean? And work with that part. Work with their defensiveness and say, like, you know, I'm sensing this coming up in you. Let's talk about it. What are you feeling? Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling shame? Are you feeling like it's really important I'm not that because my values of this? Like, you know, are you feeling like I'm not understanding you? What would be how do we navigate that? Because to me, defensiveness typically comes from like it is ego fragility, but if we're gonna like big picture it, oftentimes, it's like shame,
really?
Right? Because it's hard. Like if we're not ready to face something, it's usually because facing that would really change the way that we see ourselves day to day, and we have this image of ourselves that we try to really hold on to, whether it's accurate or not. Which most of us, it's not accurate,
right?
But we do that because we're afraid that if we don't and we see where we struggle and we have, you know, our less great parts, which we all have, that we're not good, or that, you know, we're not good enough, that we're not lovable. Like it starts to really break people apart. And so it's like, it's almost like owning that thing for them is so risky because it breaks open their sense of self, and it breaks open that part of them that they're like, well, I'm really clinging to this image of myself. And if I don't have that, then I feel like I'm a piece of shit. And so there's no in between, right? And so if we can work with people and help them realize like, oh, you could totally have these really messy parts of you and be an amazing human all at the same time.
So people don't want to let go of this identity, who they think they are.
Yeah.
How can somebody let go of that? You know, because that's a lot of like, because I realized change really, you have to change your identity, environment, people, places, and things.
Yeah.
What if somebody doesn't want to change that? You know?
Yeah. And here's the thing. When someone comes to therapy with us, they don't have to.
Right.
And if they're wanting to make progress, it's kind of like we balance that with them. Like, you can stay where you're at, and you can't expect these things to change in your life unless you create change. So you got to figure out which thing you want to hold on to, and if you're really ready to change. I mean, it's painful.
Right. And I remember you said that's why you connected with your therapist, because she wasn't afraid of you.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of clients feel like that too, because it's like, hey, I'm not going to keep you here. Like, you can walk out. Like, I'm like, I know your mom wants you here, your PO wants you here, but you have to want it.
Right.
You know, so I think that's big too, because I think, you know, I really connect with that. But, you know, there was something else that I remember hearing you said, you know, I was doing the research, and you said, you know, you're no longer looking in between the lines. And that's something at times, you know, I would struggle with too, like making the assumptions. You know, so many people make assumptions like, oh, this person did this or this, that, but there's no actually any evidence. No data. You know, where does this come from? Why do we read between the lines? Is there any truth? Is it good to do that? You know, especially if somebody's on a date, but like, how can we just be more, you know, matter of fact about that? Because it seems like maybe this is something you figured out in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I still struggle with assumptions from time to time, and it's something I've really worked on to not try to assume and to not read between the lines as much as possible, because for many people, so I kind of look at it like hypervigilance. Like if you're trying to read what's not there, it's almost like your brain is trying to predict and scan for things before they even happen,
like
right?
Like using your imagination.
Yeah. Like there's fear there, right? But also for me and my family system, they struggled a lot with communication. And again, I love my family. I think they're wonderful humans. I just think they also didn't have that from their, like, you know, if we go back generationally, they didn't have that from their generations. And so because people struggled so much with communication, there was a lot of times for me that I would see, you know, them say one thing, and then, you know, they get in the car and they would say something totally different. Or that would be when they aired their frustrations about another person. And I remember because of that, I was always in my people pleaser tendencies. I wanted to make sure everybody was okay, and I didn't upset anybody. And so I quote unquote developed this part of me that felt like I needed to scan the room and always be reading between the lines, because I didn't want to miss that somebody was mad at me or that they were going into their car and then talking about me and being like, oh, she didn't realize like that I'm really upset about this thing and blah, blah, blah. And, all, you know, wherever that goes, right? And I learned over time, though, that first, I wasn't right all the time. So I would make these guesses. And as I did that with other people that were a lot healthier, I was wrong. I was very wrong.
You're like, I'm not thinking that at all, right?
And it also created tension for us, because if I ever brought it up, they'd be like, what are you talking about, right? Like, and it does suck when someone comes to you and they kind of assume that you're, like, unfortunately, I was assuming the worst, right? So when someone thinks the worst, right? Yeah, it's not like, oh, I'm assuming you're super happy with me and like,
why is it
things
always
are great?
Nobody's assuming like, oh man, I'm just really.
You think I'm awesome and you don't, but you know.
We assume like the worst as humans. Why do we go to that all the time? We assume the worst. We, you know, just, oh, the phone rings. We assume the worst, whatever it might be. Like, I don't know. What is the psychology of humans for why we always are so.
Well, we don't have to protect ourselves against the best. We only have to protect ourselves against the worst. So I think that's why our brain's like, we don't got to worry about neutral or good. We just have to worry about bad.
And especially if there's always been bad, you always survival mode and trying to protect yourself, guarded.
Yeah.
You know, I was curious too, because it's another common topic, you know, that I see a lot of my clients struggle with is boundaries. What would you say? Because a lot of times I see people trying to give boundaries for other people to do something. You know, but it's like really the boundary is for you.
For ourselves.
Man.
Yeah.
How would you describe like what is a boundary, you know?
Yeah, I think boundaries are essentially, you know, because you're right, a lot of people look at these very differently and it can be really confusing for people. But to me, it's simply just that differentiation between you and something else or a situation where you are creating safety, neutrality, whatever it is that you're needing to be in a good headspace and mentally interact with that thing in a healthy way.
Right. Okay, awesome. A lot of people have a hard time with being able to say no. They see no as a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I get curious about what it means to them, right? Because I think it can mean different things to different people.
Yeah.
And understanding, you know, if it is a bad thing, why is that? Or is it okay for other people to say no? And, you know, typically it is, right? Like it's okay for other people to say no, but not them. And so exploring that, why are you the exception to the rule in this? Like what's going on where it's not okay for you? And even if you see it as okay for other people. And it is typically about trying to keep the peace, you know, people pleasing or not wanting to be a burden. I put in quotation marks. There's a lot of different like things I think that can come up for people with that.
Because I have a client, he's an adult and he's in this relationship. Like he'll go into relationships and stay for like a decade. What's your thoughts about this? You know, there's people in these mutual dependent relationships.
I think the biggest thing, because I think the intention, like you said, for people, it comes from this place of them being like, I don't want them to hurt and I care so much about them. And I think when you start to let them, like, if they're able to, take a few steps back and look at it, not saying no and not having that be a part of the relationship means that you guys aren't actually, you don't know each other at all.
Really?
And you're not really in a relationship with each other. You're in a relationship with what you think the other person wants.
So if you can't tell your partner no, then you're not in a real
authentic relationship. They don't know who you are.
They're
in a relationship with this person you're putting out there to them, but you're really actually guarding them from like them actually getting to know who you are.
Representative.
So sometimes I wonder too, is he afraid of rejection?
He says he's afraid of being alone. He knows exactly that's what it is.
Like it's easier to just go along with this than to like, if I do show them who I am and they don't like that, then that's really painful. Just a thought.
It is. It definitely is.
I think too, like, I don't know if it's an either or. I think there's a both and of how do we let people see who we are in ways that are kind and ways that are connecting,
Yeah.
right? Like, because I think what happens to a lot of people is when people do say no or they do start to differentiate themselves, the only examples they've seen is it bad. Is it like being really like volatile or when somebody's at their limit and so they're just like, no, versus being like, hey, that's really not my jam, right? Or just being really nice. You know, there's ways to be like kind and connecting in our no's, or kind and not that you have to be perfect. Like I just ask my husband, I'm not, and I love him dearly, and that's something we, you know, it's been part of our relationship to get more intimate and know each other by being able to share our no's and being able to let each other see some of our messier parts, even though it's really painful. Because my husband doesn't love every messy part of me, and I get that, right?
Yeah.
But how do we navigate like connecting with a person and knowing we can be who we are and saying those things in a nice way? So I think we can disagree. We can be different in ways that are connecting. But a lot of people don't see that. They just see difference. And when they see it in their family of origin, it was always like yelling, fighting, bad, you know, or maybe there were people that couldn't tolerate no's because of their own lack of emotional maturity. And so somebody said no and that person did cut them off. Right? But I think that's more about that, like what they've seen in emotional levels of maturity. There are so many people in this world that have levels of emotional maturity where they can handle no.
Right.
And I'd get curious if your client is choosing people that can't.
Oh. On purpose?
I don't, like, he's not doing it intentionally, like not consciously.
We're
maybe that's a good,
right.
But it's subconscious, but 100%.
Man, so then how would somebody, how do we change?
So yes and no.
How do we like reprogram the subconscious mind? Because once again, it's like these like, I think of it almost like this, you know, when you see the dogs and you're like maybe jogging in the neighborhood and the dogs have that invisible fence. Yeah. I feel like as humans, we have an invisible fence.
100%.
Like a mental one. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do we break out of that, you know? And then, because you see, like, you know, I know, like, there's very intelligent people. Yeah. You know, maybe attorneys, you know, even maybe doctors who might even come into, like, your practice.
100%. In fact, a lot of very intelligent, what we would see in society as intelligent, competent people really struggle with relationships and their mental health.
Isn't that crazy?
100%. Well, as a kid, that blows my mind. But now that, well, I guess now that I'm where I'm at, I'm like, it's not.
Right, I know, exactly.
But before getting into this field, absolutely, that would have shocked me.
You're like, how is this possible? Yeah. Really, it's easy, actually.
It's so easy. And I mean, there's a lot that we could go down that path about. But I think, so one of my favorite TED Talks that I recommend to people is called Honest Lies.
Honest Lies, okay. What's this about?
It's about self-deception, how we all struggle with that. And in fact, the smarter you are, the more you can kind of struggle with that because you're really sophisticated at the ways that you'll lie to yourself. So a lot of attorneys and doctors can be some of the trickiest to work with in regards to that because they are so smart that they've figured out really sophisticated ways of keeping their ego.
Oh, what's that defense mechanism? Intellectualization? Is that what it is?
Oh, 100%. And even like, man. I mean, admittedly for myself too, like so when you said how do we work on this? Yeah. I'm still figuring parts of that out. I think some people, they can do it cognitively. Like they can read through my book and get a lot out of that, or they can listen to this podcast and this can be really like, you could get those aha moments and they can take action. For some people, like myself, there's like, you can know better, but it hasn't made that like drop into your body and into your heart to do better. Yes. For me, I know it's been a lot of a nervous system thing for me that I've worked really hard to be disconnected from my body my entire life. So for me, what's helped a lot, and again, it's controversial and we could talk about it if you want, but I started doing psychedelic assisted therapy with ketamine about a year and a half ago, maybe a year and a half ago. Yeah. And that's been super helpful.
Is that mushrooms?
No, it's ketamine. So I've not done mushrooms. I'm not against trying that, but it's not legal in the state of Kansas. So, so I'd probably have to go somewhere where it's legal to do that. But ketamine is a psychedelic that is legal for us to use to work on PTSD and trauma and things like that.
Because I've heard of ketamine before. So is this like almost like a creatine, almost like a similar thing like that? Is it like a powder? Is it a liquid? You drink this and then you...
It's a medicine.
It's a
and
medicine.
there are different ways of doing it. So I'm glad you mentioned that. You could get it from like, they can inject you with what they call IM ketamine, and that's more like the percentage of how much your body absorbs varies based on how it's administered. So the IM ketamine tends to be like 93 to 99% of that medicine you'll get it. So you can get lower dosages. It's more controllable. People do a nasal spray, which I forget the amount. Again, nurse practitioners know much more than I do, and doctors about this, but I think it's like 30 to 40% absorbable that way. Some people do troches and like the lozenges.
And so you're saying that ketamine is going to help you calm the nervous system so you can now get out of your head and connect with your heart space?
It does that in some different ways that people might be surprised. I'm actually currently training more in what they call PSIP, which is like a specific somatic form of ketamine therapy. But for me, it helped me get through being able to cognitively, like I would stay in my head and I could cognitive my way through any therapy session of my own, like my own therapy. I would just be like, I know this and da 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 da. And it's like, I knew better. But when I do ketamine sessions with my CAP therapist, it's almost like those defenses are gone because you get deeper and you go into your subconscious and there's things that come up and you're just not as in control of things, which I need because I struggle with that.
So you said CAP therapy? Is that a form of therapy? And so you drink the ketamine and then you go into therapy? I'm not really all the way familiar how this
totally
works.
I love this. It's like, it is so new. And even like 3 years ago, if you had asked me, I would be like, this is crazy. So ketamine spelled Ketamine.
And then you said CAP therapy?
Yeah, that's
like
an
CAP?
acronym for ketamine assisted psychotherapy.
Oh, okay. Okay, there we go. And so then you go into the therapy office, she gives you this tea, and then now you go in a trance state. And
it's not tea. I wish it was tea. That would be cool. That would be really sweet. But she actually works with a nurse practitioner.
Nice.
And the nurse practitioner gives you the medicine. So these are like typically...
Right before you go in?
These are typically like 2.5 hour sessions.
Oh, yeah, you got to give me the number of that.
Yeah. So you go into that state, you're with your therapist, they're supporting you through that whole journey, letting you get into those deeper states. Sometimes too, your body will literally release stuff while you're doing it. Like you wouldn't have known that you had certain things going on and it releases it. And so that's part of the like somatic stuff too, that I'm not smart enough to explain why that happens, but I do know that I found a lot of healing myself in that. And so that's been like, I've never been able to do that in talk therapy. And so I'm not saying people have to do it this way. It's just been one of the ways that I've found is really helpful for me.
Wow. And so you're maybe advising like people who are like very, the high value intellectualized kind of folks, attorneys and doctors who are, or just even individuals who are very smart people who are stuck in their head. Yes. They know all the therapy jargon. They know how to, they read the books, but they don't know how to apply it.
Yeah, I mean, they get in their own way.
To that expert trap,
Yeah, honestly, it's funny. They're so smart in one way, but so dumb in another that other people have that intelligence.
This is how I feel when it comes to hiring another therapist there, Jenny. And, I would love to, pick your brain on that.
One of the things, I've failed so many times, like along the journey. I just want to say that. And I think that's important for people to hear. Yeah. Like, there's so many things I've done wrong. And I think the difference was I was able to tolerate that and kind of try to learn from it. Yeah. Versus getting stuck in it and being too hard on myself, if that makes sense. I get really clear because some people I hear, and I don't know if this is what I'm hearing in you or not, or you can speak to it, but please. It's almost like they feel weird about wanting to have more time or wanting to have more money or more flexibility or things like that. There's almost a guilt or
survival's guilt.
Yeah. It's do I get to do that? And it's of course, I think you just got to be clear on your why, and that it's okay that you want a better work-life balance or you want more money. That's the dirty word for therapists. It's okay that you want to be paid well. And it's such a funny field in that way that so many therapists feel guilty about wanting to be financially successful. The other thing too, totally ask for help.
Yeah.
I think too, a lot of therapists, they get in their heads oh, if I do go do this, I got to figure it all out. And it's if you have anybody in your life that's better, so I have so many people in my life that are better at things than I am, and if I like can get that help, or I mean, freaking ChatGPT is really cool.
It's really cool.
I use it a lot nowadays, and I'll be like, I'll put it through that, and then I'll put it through people to be like, to make it easier for them, if that makes sense. Like I want to bring it to them being like, I've thought out all these things. What am I missing?
Yeah.
You know, things like that. You know, so
who was it for you? Like to inspire you to like the business side of it, you know, like the therapy, we know that was that therapist possibly, but the business side, I feel like there had to be somebody that, even if it was somebody on a podcast.
You know, that's a great question. 'Cause it's hard. I feel like there's so many people that influence different parts of that journey.
Yeah.
It's hard to narrow it to one, but I can narrow it down to a few that I'm like, for sure they influenced me. So I want to give them credit. Yeah. The two owners of Real Life Counseling, Brandon Jacobs and Jolie Barra. Okay. Great, amazing humans. Yeah. Because
you were working there at one point, right?
Yeah, that was where I was before. Okay. And they're just really fantastic humans. And I always felt very accepted and encouraged by them. Even when I first started, as, you know, like I actually started their coaching before I did therapy. So that was kind of an interesting segue too, because a lot of people don't do that route. And so they always believed in me, and that was just such a wonderful gift. Dr. Rathbun, my supervisor, my oldest sister, Cassandra, she owns a preschool in Georgia. Okay. And so, sister? So she's been she's been entrepreneurial minded. And so having somebody in my family system that I've seen do that.
I knew it had to be somebody in the
cool.
family.
Yeah. You were always saying family. I was like, not my parents, but I do want to give her credit because, you know, she's 9 years older than I am. So I was able to watch that. And she even like gave me my first job, and like, it was really cool.
Does she know like how much influence she had on you to start in the practice?
You know, I feel like I've maybe mentioned it, but while we're talking about it, I'm like, I need to be more intentional and tell her. So that's cool. That came from this for me.
I know, man. I'm thinking about it too. Like I need to
I need to tell her that.
Give those flowers to her. Like, man, like you really, because maybe she was the first person you seen close to you who had their own like thing. Like I just always thought that was so cool. Like all those people inspired you.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are others too that I'm not mentioning or like, I mean, I'm a big podcast person too. So I'm sure there were people on podcasts that I was like, ooh, I never thought of things that way.
What's your top favorite podcast? Like, you know, the go-tos.
It depends on the subject. Cause I do a lot of like,
motivation.
Let's say that
motivation, like kind of, just kind of like life stuff. Like maybe, you know.
That's a great question.
Yeah. I love hearing what other podcasts people like.
I really like, if it's like entrepreneurial motivation, Layla Hormozi does really good work there.
I think the name sounds familiar.
Simon Sinek. I think he does a lot of really cool leadership stuff.
Yeah. What's his podcast name?
I don't know that he has, I'm like trying to think if he has an actual podcast, or like typically I'll just like search the person.
Right.
And like, you know, from just there.
Simon Sinek is nice.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember he said something, one of the podcasts I like is The Diary of CEO, Stephen Bartlett.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's around our age. Good. He's like same age as me, he's 32.
Oh my gosh, I'm glad you mentioned that. I watch a lot of his too.
Yeah, he has some nice stuff. I think he had Simon on there as well. And I remember Simon, he said something about like we can be good listeners for work, but when we come home, it's like.
Yeah, and I know that those themes have come up for me and my husband as well, you know? So like I just want to validate that for you, but also like anybody who's in a role of listening and being empathetic and holding space for people. It's not just therapists, but we definitely therapists, I would say, if you're in a clinical setting. And I think there's other professions too where you end up doing that you realize that it can be tough to balance that and figure out how to take care of yourself enough so that you do have something left for your partner.
For sure. I always feel like kind of like, you know, in the helping field though, we get it bad because people are like, well, you're a therapist, so you should know. Like you can't say you're an engineer, so you should have been able to listen to me, you know? So it's like, like if you're like a pastor or like, you know, like a therapist or like kind of these fields, like sometimes people can try to use that as an attack if they want to.
That's so true.
You know?
Like we have to be on our therapist A game.
It's like, I thought you were my best friend and you were supposed to be a therapist. What kind of And then, you know what I mean? Like,
you can't ever have your moments of not being
right.
a good
you can't even have a drink. I saw my therapist having a drink at the bar. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Or just like I think, having fun or just being a human or,
Do you say hi to your clients when you see them in public?
I mean, well, HIPAA. Technically, they have to say hi to us first.
Right.
I
Isn't
will
it kind of
say,
awkward? You're just like...
it's funny because I have had some like funny moments of that, but like I am so lucky that most of the time if I see my clients, they're like, hey, like they are the ones being super chill about it. I will say I've never run into my older clients in public, so I wonder if it would be different if I ran it. Because like I do think there's an age thing in the sense of like, even for me, when I went to therapy as a teenager, I didn't tell anybody. And I'd be gone for like 3 months and then come back and it's like, hey guys, I was just here. Like it was just so obvious, but like no one talked about it, but everybody knew, but no one talked about it. Yeah. And I didn't either. Cause I was like, that's the rule, right? We don't talk about this. And then my clients that, I've seen that struggle with eating disorders, they would come in and be like, yeah, so I told my class I was going to therapy. And like, they're so cool and open about it.
Yeah. It's, what the eating disorders, I know affects a lot of women. So it's like, what is it like, having to be a woman in 2024, having the pressures of that, guys, we don't get it, like how.
You do and you don't. I mean, I would say guys do too. It's just different. It's just a different pressure. I do think culturally women still, if we want to get into this, this can go deep, but
yeah, let's go.
I think that we do certain things to men and put them in certain boxes. And then historically, we've done things to women and putting them in certain boxes. One of those things being we objectify women. They are their body. Yeah. And because of that and the different ways we've created that, and women have even created that for themselves, they treat themselves like an object. And they are the ones that end up being more focused on their body and all these different pieces because of that objectification. There's an amazing TED Talk if you want to go down the rabbit hole on this called Beauty Sickness by Renee Engeln, Engeln. And she talks about it and kind of the history of it. And even just how women, like our bodies are always supposed to be these different things every decade. It's like fashion, like it changes.
Man, right? It feels like it is, yeah.
And I still think men get some of that. I do think men still get this pressure that they are supposed to look a certain way,
they're supposed to be
physically,
tall.
Or I think it can
can't
come
do nothing
out
about that though.
Tall, big, whatever that looks like, right? Like I think men struggle with that, and it's like that's also another thing we put on them. That's again not cool. But I also think men have pressures in other ways where they're supposed to be that have not been healing for them, where they're supposed to be tough or they're supposed to be the provider and make a ton of money to be a man or whatever other themes that they end up like I've found men tend to be more anxious about money in their careers than women are because of the ways that society has said that's your worth, that's what we make you.
Do you feel like there's some truth to it though?
Truth to what? To
like the money part for like men, because I realized even like for some men, like they're not like, and I don't mean like they need making like 6 figures, a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like I just see like a lot of men when their finances are not right, they're not able to fully commit to their partners. I realized that like when a man is not financially stable, he's not thinking about marriage.
Well,
it's expensive, like kids and home, like.
Yeah, well, I would say that's just like how a woman, if she feels like her body isn't right, she might not put herself out there.
It's true. Man.
Right? It's a different theme, but we both have it in different ways and do it to ourselves even, And so I would say, because it's like, to me, a man is worthy no matter where he's at financially or if he's struggling or not. Like, I mean, you're human and you're worthy. We all, as humans, I mean, shoot, I've had periods of my life I took a loan out against my car and I was scraping by and like also looking back not making the best financial decisions, but I was still worthy, and I think a man in that position is just as worthy. And
I agree with that 100%. But I feel like maybe it's just the internet, but like me, even like when I was single going on dates, I feel like a lot of young people, they would not agree with that, and maybe they'll agree with that in public, but like they're just like, well, what do you do for work? And they find out, oh, you just work at Home Depot. Yeah. And then now they go date the guy who's, doing something more, So it's like, I think a lot of men sometimes struggle with that a lot, having to be financially stable, because I also think, in my own personal opinion, for a woman, I'm not a woman, but just from the clients that I have that are women, they feel like they're not able to be feminine if their man is making significantly less than them.
If by feminine, they mean like
to be able to
homemakers or like
like they feel like they have to
kids.
be more of the man because they have to wear their pants. Like I have like a handful of clients who have said this. They're like,
no, I believe it.
He's like, I'm over here doing all this. You know, and so I was like, I get that, especially in the Black community there, Jenny. Like, man, this is big. You know, so it's like women don't want to have to be masculine. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's like, I would really want to dig deep, because I think for some people that's genuine and that comes from a healthy place.
100%.
And I think, might be controversial, I think for a lot of us it doesn't. Like it doesn't in the sense of like, I get curious about, is it because we're afraid that we feel like I need my person to do this because I have to have this type of life because of, again, where is that coming from, right? Or how life looks like for you, or what roles you have to do. It doesn't mean you can't love being in certain roles or want to go after certain things. I think universally we do all need financial stability. Yeah. But what that means looks very different than even like, I think a lot of people, when they think of financial stability, think of something actually a lot more than financial stability, right? As far as feeling safe in their finances. Like if we want to go into like finance trauma, and how that impacts people, like when they're money trauma, like how they see money. I never really
heard those two words, financial trauma.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like how that impacts how people make decisions, the partners they choose, how they say, I have to have this or that, or I need to be this or that for a high value woman to like me, right? Like those terms being thrown around there, which
some of these podcasts have kind of spread some of the divisiveness.
Oh, yeah. And I want to empathize, like, I get it because of the culture we grew up in. We were all told this message. Like all of us. Like you fit this role, you fit this one.
You go into that
Don't
box.
Fuck it up. Like don't mess with it. Don't change that, right? And that created a lot of fear. That created a lot of fear for people. And while some people, they do thrive in those roles, it doesn't fit for many people. Or at least not exactly how culture shares, you have to be this or that or whatever. And to me, it's like, so say you were a man and you don't have all your finances together, I think I would get curious of the reasons why, and if you're working on being like financially healthy enough to be stable, right?
Yes.
But like you could be like, you could have a job that doesn't pay a ton, be financially stable, and still be worthy and like have like be able to date and be in a good space to attract a really amazing partner that isn't about your finances, right? Stuff, like, it's not like, because I think some people even are like, I can't be my dream career because, they're afraid they wouldn't be able to provide enough or have enough money to be worthy. And it's like, no, that's not. Let's get clear about that. Because I think if a woman or whatever, a man or whatever partner on the other side says you have to have this money, like I would get curious with them, like where that is coming from, or like if it really is accurate or not. Like you could still have a family and not be, maybe you won't have exactly the lifestyle you hope for or dream for, but is that really what you need to be happy? Because a lot of people tie that with like happiness, where it's not, it's actually irrelevant. Like once you reach a certain amount of stability, your happiness is super minimal what goes up.
Well, can you say more about that? Because obviously there's so many people in today's age, especially young folks, who feel like if they get to this set number or they get this car or whatever it is, then I'll be happy. So speak more on that, like, because because obviously we need money I feel like money definitely makes us stable. Maybe it doesn't make us happy, but it can make us stable for sure. Yeah. And that stability can then produce maybe happiness. But what's your take on all that? Like,
I think stability matters. Like, I don't want to downplay that part, because I do think if you're not able to feed yourself and have that like rainy day fund for when things inevitably happen in life, that is I've lived in that place, and it's stressful, and it's always in the back of your mind in a genuine way, because that makes sense to me. Like you're really trying to like create stability. But if we're saying like, hey, I've got a Honda and I want a Corvette, like if that's the difference, like if we're like, let's be clear, right, of like what that looks like. I think that's where we have to dig deeper and say, is that really about some idea you have around a Corvette? And I'm not anti people that want Corvettes. Like, if that's where you want to put your money, if you are able to like make it make sense in other ways and be healthy, that's cool. I don't care, right? But the idea that like your happiness is waiting on that or contingent on that, that's something that person has created for themselves.
What do you think makes happiness?
Oh, great question. Because to me, it's like, okay, so what are people, when they say happiness, what do they mean?
Exactly.
Right. So to me, when I think of genuine like happiness, I think of like people day to day being in a place where their nervous system is safe enough that they're able to connect more so with what I would call like their authentic self day to day more often than not, where the authentic self is able to be honest and curious. Like, so if someone gets upset with them, they're curious. They're not like, oh, you got upset with me. You know, they're more compassionate. They're more competent. They're able to learn. They're playful. They're like, it's like when you're authentic, you're actually able to play and not take yourself so seriously. So to me, it's like, when I think of like, how do we get happiness? I think it's more about like being in a state of life or for living in a way that more often than not we're with our authentic self.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So it's just about being true to yourself, you know?
Yeah, and being your nervous system being safe so you can play.
Yeah. And so then getting the nervous system safe, is it, you know, diet, obviously, like you talked about the ketamine, yoga, which is something also that I forget that you guys do there as well. Do you guys have like a yoga studio at Soma?
We have large spaces where people, and like mats and stuff too. It's not I wouldn't call it a studio, but we do have some large spaces that people use for groups.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So trying to be able to get that nervous system regulated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Was that a long journey for you?
I'm still working on it. I mean, true. Like I've done a lot of work. I'm still working on it because I think, you know, I'm more connected to my authentic self than I've been in the past. I still would like to get in a better space to where that's increased my happiness too.
What do you feel like as far as like, because people say like, hey, I want to be healed. I want to be fully healed. Like, can we really be healed? Is there like this destination like to like healing? You know?
No.
You know,
I don't. And I'm not saying like, I don't know, maybe there is some definition of that out there, but like, you know, I got to give credit to Dr. Rathbun, my supervisor. He would say, you know, we never arrive.
Is he still practicing?
Yeah.
Okay.
He is.
Nice.
I had to think about that for a second because I was like, he stopped and he's mostly in retirement now. So he's not really seeing a ton of people, but he absolutely is. Yeah.
So he says, can you speak more on that?
Yeah, like we never arrive. Like we're never fully done healing. We're never like, oh, I'm done. I have no more work to do and everything's good forever and ever. Amen. Right?
Right.
And I remember when I first heard that, I was like, well, that's crappy. Like that kind of sucks. But then it was like, oh no, it's a relief.
Just keeps
like
going.
I know, but it was like permission to be human, permission to know that like this is a journey and like what is, good enough, right? It's never going to be perfect. So what is like your like balance that you feel like you're like, that's good for me.
It's good enough.
Yeah.
And so many people in the West don't feel good enough. It's like so many people's shadow statement, like a lack of, I don't feel smart enough. That's something I, struggled with. I don't feel pretty enough. I don't feel like I make enough money. Like this is what I've realized, that pattern of so many of my clients is that lack.
Yeah.
I'm missing something. I don't feel like I'm doing enough.
Yeah.
There's so many not enoughs. So it's just like, how can somebody who's maybe tuning in today, like, feel good enough with what they have,
yeah,
that's just what I really see. Like, it's just a big thing in the West for first world problems.
For sure. And like, to give people credit, like our brains are wired to kind of like, when you talk about those historical things that we did and like ways we were trying to survive, like,
yeah, back then.
Yeah. And even just like, so yes, there's childhood trauma. There's the history of our human race, right?
Yeah. Man.
There's all these pieces where our brain is designed to pick up on like how we're not good enough and to like be more negative. It's like we have negative attribution bias typically is what they call it. And you can heal that by like working to like train yourself to not do that, because we're already going to be doing that enough by default. How are you implementing practices in your life to create more neutrality, where you're seeing where you're good enough and you're not comparing yourself to other people? Because if you're ever looking for ways that you're not good enough, just compare yourself to people, because you will always be better or worse than another person.
Isn't that crazy?
All of us, yeah. I'm not the best practice owner. I am not the best podcaster. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like there's always,
right, for sure.
I'm not the best therapist. Like, it's
so
okay.
There's always, that's true. So then how do you get out of that though? Because there's some people that are stuck in that, especially, obviously younger or older people. It's just like that comparison, and say, hey, the comparison is the thief of joy. But it's like almost sometimes it feels like it's just like we just do it even if we don't want to. It's just like, it's like a nanosecond. You kind of just, I don't know if that's like in our nature as humans to compare. Yeah. Or is that just because of social media?
All the above, honestly. Some of the things we're doing with social media definitely enhance what's already there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why we're not, it's not like I'm like, hey, social media is evil, but it really does work against some of our goals with mental health.
Absolutely. I would say so.
Yeah. So it's like if you're like, hey, I'm not anti like a person, I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but it's like, there are things that are not bad, but it's like if you have certain goals and you want to be healthy, you've got to like have some balance in it, right? Like you've got to like
absolutely, for sure,
figure out what that looks like for you. But without going on that tangent, I do think, for many of us, because of like the brain's history and things like that, we have evolved to, again, like I compare and struggle with that. I think to counter that, I think about our worth, like what is good enough? And are we still defining that by all these things that are not actually about our worth?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, why are we putting our worth on all these other things? I think it's because a lot of people don't know that they're just worthy. Like you are just worthy. There's no prerequisites.
Yeah.
And I could say that, and there's going to be people that even as me saying that, they're going to be like, bullshit.
Yeah, and that's right? Exactly.
Even a part of me was like, oh, I'm still working through that. You know what I mean?
Let's
like
talk to
it's
that
hard.
though, because it's so real. Because even as you saying that, I'm just like, I'm not worthy. I need to expand. I need to do this, or I should do more. So I'm even hearing that, and then I know somebody else is just like, all right, whatever. But like our mind says, yeah, we get that, but it's like, all right, Jenny, like, come on.
Yeah, I have multiple parts of myself too where I'm like, yeah, and then other parts are like, like that does not feel safe to even say.
What is that part called that does that? Is that, I don't know if I can't even think what it would be.
We have to identify it for ourselves what it is, because I think we all might have a unique flavor to that.
It's like the inner child.
Yeah, but for me, it's definitely shame and fear. Definitely shame and fear of like, because I didn't get that messaging as a kid. I didn't get it from my caregivers, where I think when we're a kid, we are like, I have to get it from them. And and other sources in my life, like I didn't get that message, because of that, it like internally, I was working against that so much of my life, like against that message of being worthy enough, if that makes sense. Like I was always thinking I wasn't, and finding more evidence to why I wasn't, and trying to like fix it in other ways that weren't even about my worth, right? And so I think it's just so deeply ingrained in me because I didn't get that initial messaging, which most of us don't. And it's not because our parents tried to do that either. Like sometimes we just misperceived things as kiddos, or like societally, like there's cultural messages we get at school or outside of our parents that actually pushed against what they did. And so it's not like, I don't want to just like blame one thing. I think it's like societally, a lot of us have that wounding. And so that's the higher cultural message. And I also believe that like happier people are like, if we feel worthy, we buy less stuff. We're not great consumers in our economy.
Yeah.
So there's some
I forgot, it was a Susan, what's her name? I can't think of her name, but she says that she's like, when you're happy, you spend less, because you don't have that void to fill. And like, even like kind of hearing like what you're saying, I'm, applying it to myself. I'm just like, I feel like I have to do more, but it's like, almost like if it's like, hey, like, hey, this is enough.
Yeah.
I don't have to work for somebody. I have this, like, hey, like a part of me is like, hey, like Chris, this is enough. Like, you're good. Like, just be grateful.
Yeah.
And then I feel bad for wanting more. because I'm like, hey, I should be grateful that I make my own schedule, like this, you know what I mean? So I should just be grateful.
I mean,
you know,
I think all of us feel that way, right? Like we're like, why are we not more grateful? And our brain is wired not to be.
Right.
We have to like practice it to even create balance.
It's wired not to be grateful.
Yeah. It's wired to find ways that like we're not good enough if we grow up in a culture that tells us we're not good enough.
Do you feel like then maybe is it really our brain, or is it the culture that's programmed us to think this way so we can spend more money you know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
it's like, oh, you're not pretty enough, you should try this makeup, or you don't have you're cool enough, you should buy this car, or
it's a
iPhone
both
16,
and.
It's 17.
It's a both and, because I think over time we've figured out culturally, whoever's creating these things at the top of our culture of the messages we get day to day through like social media, advertisements, whatever.
Right.
They start to know how our brain works. So they do things in the messaging that like works with our brain. So I think it's a both and. Like our brains work that way, but also they are targeting that. So it's not like, I mean, yes, we have some, I think it is more so about the messaging than our brains itself. But our brain is designed in a certain way that they kind of, play into that fear mechanism. Right?
Wow.
And so... yeah, I'm like, I could talk about this for another podcast too, of just like how much I think this is more about, again, we're not good to market to when we're mentally healthy and in touch with our authentic self.
Definitely, man. I wanted, for the last part to kind of talk about the book, because, like I said, I haven't read the book and I don't know what the chapters are or like the titles or if you could speak more on the book, because I think that's really cool. It's something I definitely want to do before, maybe I retire or just in life, to write a book. You know, that sounds so fun.
Just do it.
Yeah.
I say it like it's easy, but like I say that in the sense of like, I think a lot of people have that imposter syndrome that they have to like have it be X, Y, or Z to do it. If you've got great ideas and you enjoy that process.
I think it'll be so much easier now with ChatGPT. I can have it just edit the grammar and stuff now. Like, oh my gosh, because I can be like, hey, can you, like, what's a better word for this? Or like, because I like just to write in it and then just like, hey, just fix the grammar and make it make sense. Like, just throw it in there and
100%. I'm sad I didn't have ChatGPT at the time. I'm so sad because I can be super long-winded. And I felt like
just make this page shorter.
Yes, I feel like it would have been a better book with ChatGPT, admittedly. Like, I don't think, as far as like structure, I'm not the best author.
Okay.
And I would have loved to have a bit more support in that at the time.
Right.
But I didn't want that to get in the way of me just putting stuff out there.
Right. So in the main, like, what would you say? Because you say rediscovering your awesomeness, right? What does that mean? So
that was my way of trying to like connect people to terms that, if you just say your true authentic self, people are going to be like, what the flip does that mean? So when I was like, beneath your bullshit, to me, that's like beneath the trauma layers that we have and the parts of us that come up to protect ourselves. I believe we all have like this true, healthy, authentic self that some of us, we are so enmeshed with our trauma parts that we hardly ever see that part of ourselves. So that's why we feel so crappy. We don't even know who we are, really.
Yeah, that's so true.
We're just living out of our trauma and our fear. And I wanted to get a book out there to help people learn how to differentiate some of that, at least cognitively, and be able to bring that into therapy or bring that into a meditation practice or whatever it was for them, to get a bit more clear and get more attached to that true authentic self.
How can somebody get more attached to their true authentic self?
They got to figure out what's in the way, the bullshit.
Yeah, that's the beneath.
We all have different bullshit. We all have different gardens of bullshit.
Gardens of bullshit.
That's why when you're like, what gets in the way? And I'm like, depends. Like for some people it's roses, for some people it's weeds, for some people
right. It's just something in the way.
Yeah.
And then what if it's just us? Because even like back to, sometimes there's nothing in the way. It's just that fear, like you said, the shame. Like some of the things in the way I feel like are the biggest things are the things you can't see.
Well, I would say that fear and shame is a part of us that gets in the way. I wouldn't say it's so when you say it's us, I'm like, that to me sounds like an enmeshed part.
Okay.
Because we are not
we're not our
shame and our fear. Right. I know it can feel that way. Even in the moment, it feels like that is who we are, right? And I get enmeshed with my parts. Like that is a ever evolving thing. But it's like, as we're doing our work and we're healing, there are going to be moments we get enmeshed with our parts and then moments we're able to step back and see it.
Yeah. So how do you create distance between that so you don't realize like, hey, I'm not my shame, I'm not my, guilt or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, usually that is where we have to do some we have to create space for self-reflection, reading stuff, therapist, coach. I'm trying to give people options because it's not just one path.
It's so true.
Right? And sometimes it's something happens to you and then all of a sudden you see things differently. Right?
Yes.
Like an event in your life and you're like, fudge. Or you hear someone else kind of go through something or share their aha moment and you're like, I never thought about it that way.
It's experience.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I love group healing too. I love groups when we can create that in our culture. Yeah. We've moved so far away from that in the medical model. We're everybody has to be seen individually. It's all secrets. Right? It's all whatever. And it's no, we're all in the soup of healing. Yeah. And being in group, there's group wisdom. There's group synergy. There's group healing.
I don't know what the future looks like for therapy, or maybe it just stay like this, or maybe be more like the CAP kind of stuff. Or do you have any thoughts or follow any of the podcasts that talk about the future of therapy? Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball by any means, so I don't want to say I know what it looks like. I would guess that there is going to be more psychedelic assisted therapy in the future, and I do think there's a place for AI and ChatGPT to help people with their mental health. I don't want to hate on it because some people are like, oh, it's evil. And I'm like, no, I think there's a place, but it's limited. So if we're talking about ChatGPT, I think we're also still getting stuck in that process where clients are just in their heads and they're thinking about the content. They're not able to see the process and they're not able to because ChatGPT can't pick up on that. They can't pick up on the process. They can't catch certain things that we're going to see and know the nuances or the patterns as well. If they're also the client might take, so it's going to be even more self-deception because you're asking questions and going down a certain rabbit hole. Right. ChatGPT is not designed to help people with that. So they're just going to go wherever you want to go. That's true. So
true. You could take it more down a rabbit hole when it's that's really not the issue. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
So there's some goodness where I think in the middle of someone needing just some space in an emergent situation and they're able to kind of process some stuff with ChatGPT and it helps to give them some information in that moment to help. I think that's great. I think use that. There's even an IFS app that I was like, that's really cool. If you can do that and if you don't have access to a therapist, it's better than nothing.
Internal family system stuff?
Yeah.
Is that I know you like that stuff a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, you could probably tell I was using a lot of parts language. I was parts this, parts that, but it's
that's so cool.
Yeah, I do love the IFS model. I relate to it a lot. It's not, I use other stuff too a lot, but
how would you explain to somebody who's not familiar,
Yeah, sorry. I'm that was a good question. Do you have an explanation you would give?
I don't. I've been trying to one thing I like about ChatGPT a lot, most of my clients are, I would say 20, 18, 25, or even sometimes 16. So I'll throw something maybe real complex in there and can you explain this in words of a 16-year-old?
Yes.
So then I'm hey, look. Yes. This is what we're trying to tell you, what your mom is saying, and then it's just oh, makes sense.
No, I love that.
And so I always just try to go based on that. Simplicity is the highest form of sophistication. Just being able to have an image or just a word and just boom.
Yeah.
It just sticks. I feel the subconscious relates to it easier. I feel for me at least.
Yeah, it's so true. I don't know that I'm sophisticated enough in IFS to distill it down enough.
Yeah. It's a lot more complex. Yeah.
I mean, I would if I tried, my try would be that just how we are in different systems with people, we have relationships with people in our lives. Yeah. We have this what we call internal system of parts of us shame, fear, anxiety, perfectionism.
Oh man, that's a big one.
It's going to be different flavors for different people and show up differently for different people. And so it's the way that you relate to these parts of yourself and how you're having that internal dialogue from what we call your true authentic self, which is a part of you that's not tied to all these fears and
this is like completely off topic, but it's just like when you were saying those different flavors, I'm thinking like, what if they had like a therapy like ice cream store, like, how like you can get the trauma like cupcake blast, and you can get like
it's delicious.
You can get like the codependent like cookie crunch, a little
sprinkle of codependency on top.
It's like, let me get the codependent. Like I feel like that would just like, we gotta start. I feel like people will love that. Let me get the
Would you like it enmeshed or separated?
Just like all the therapy jargon, but it's like a dish. Like there's the entree, you got the dessert. Like everything has like a therapy title there. But man, Jenny, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I know we could go on forever, probably even another hour, talking about therapy things. And I appreciate some of the advice you gave me as well. But man, we got to figure out some consulting that you could give to me for like, I'll pay for services to figure out how to, maybe just even to hire on one, therapist when I'm ready, whenever that is, or even just to work through that for myself. I would really, appreciate that. If that's something you possibly could offer, that would be great.
Yeah. And I'm happy. I think I'm happy to help and don't not ask for help. I ask so many people, like people see where I'm at and I'm like, it's me plus a whole team of people and being like willing to like get over my own fear, shame, embarrassment. Yeah. Because I knew nothing about business, like nothing. Like people would talk language at me. And at first I used to pretend like I knew what they were saying. I'd be like, yeah. And then eventually I was like, what the flip are you talking about? Like, I just like, I got to a point where I couldn't fake it anymore. I was like, I have to ask what that means. And that was hard. Like my ego was like, oh, that's hard to like admit. You don't know this thing that everyone around you is talking and they know what it is and you don't. And you're just like, or at least for me, I was just like, oh no, I have to be the person in the room asking the question. And so that's been part of the journey. And I share that because I want other people to be like, don't let that get you back. Yeah. Don't let that hold you back.
Yeah, that's
you're gonna not know stuff. It's
you need to ask questions. You can't do it alone, Yeah. And I know if somebody's been watching and they got all the way to this point, they may even want to book a session with you, but I know like you don't really see too many
I'm not
people. So like if you guys are watching, like I don't know if you're just doing coaching, but you're just strictly focused on the business right now. So I'm sorry guys, but I'm sure that she has another provider.
I was about to say, I really love connecting people though.
To other people to find a good fit. Right?
Not just at like in my practice, but in the community. Right, I love getting to know you better is like really cool because I've already I'm like, oh, I think I have some people that would mesh well.
I'm full, Jenny.
Yeah. But no, you're full. Okay, that's why you need to hire another person.
This is why I need that consulting stuff. That's what we gotta do. But man, so I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure that you guys subscribe and like. Go ahead and follow Jenny on TikTok, man. Follow her on Instagram. I'm sure that it's probably just Jenny Helms.
It's Jenny Ann Helms. Ann's my middle name. So
okay, awesome. And Helms, is that your maiden?
It's my maiden name.
Okay, Jenny Helms, and Kyle, he's okay with it, all right? He doesn't trip too much, right?
No, and I've had that before we were married, and he's chill about it.
Business. There we go. It's 2024, so we make it different, So this has been, this is gonna conclude the episode, guys. Once again, thank you for watching. If you guys need a therapist, make sure you guys reach out to us. There's so many therapists in the community. Man, it's 2024 once again. And you could see somebody even in, Kansas City, and do a telehealth session. So no excuses to bettering yourself so you can become the greatest version. Once again, as Jenny is here, we're going to sign off. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Boom! Look at you. You did both of those first try. That's really impressive.
The first time,
Usually when I used to do like my stuff, I'd be like, and I would just I'd be like, all right, I got to record.
Fully connected.